Hello, guys, and welcome back. We got week 16 here with Willie Creamin's Fantasy Football Happy Hour. I know some leagues were in the first week of the playoffs, some week were in the second, some leagues were in the second week of the playoffs, but regardless, it's usually going to be fantasy playoff football we've got going on right here. I know some leagues it kind of depends, right? Some opted for to just go into week 17 with them being extended to the 18 weeks in the NFL season. But for this week, myself, I've got some semifinal matchups. I've also got some final matchups in my guillotine league as well. But what I want to do is be able to give you guys some options. And I know usually Sundays are my day that I usually hop on and I'll tell you guys some stuff. But I felt like today we really needed to dive into some stuff. Yeah, we had a great Thursday night game. Kind of got screwed with Alvin Kamara, but we had that going on Thursday night. Great game between the Rams and the Saints, and then kind of moving forward on that, we've got a few games tonight that you'll be seeing right after this. And I just wanted to make sure we went through some of that before, as you're going to be making some serious decisions in playoff fantasy football. So, um, without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So, I know this is coming to you after the Thursday night game, as I mentioned, but listen, if you had Cup, Nakua, or Kamara on your roster, you were definitely starting them. I know Kamara definitely shit the bed, and Cup didn't do great. They were a little bit disappointing, but Nakua was definitely a league winner for you, not only all season, but definitely this week. I think in my league, he ended up putting up 33 points. He's been an absolute rock star. So if you had him in your lineup, definitely felt good about it. Someone in one of my leagues did not, and I'm sure they're probably kicking themselves about it. So, listen, the only tough decisions you may have had this week were probably Stafford and Olave, but for different reasons, right? You know, you look at Stafford, he's been playing really well lately, but this New Orleans was going to be a tough matchup for him. It didn't really matter, though. He absolutely crushed it with them, played very, very well, and really has this team poised to be able to make a serious playoff run. Uh, there's rumors already of them possibly meeting Detroit in the playoffs, and I'll tell you that would be very surreal seeing Matt Stafford and the Rams travel to Detroit for a playoff game. I mean, it just tell me that wouldn't be an absolute game you needed to watch. So, conversely from that, you had Olave who was banged up, right? Like he was injured. He didn't play last week. It might have been tough starting him this week just because you were kind of uncertain what you were going to get, especially with that ankle injury. It wasn't your common ankle that you have with issues on the outside of the ankle. This was actually on the inside, which was very, very rare of an injury to have. So kind of some skepticism whether to start him or not. But he put up some very solid numbers for him just coming back. Looked really, really good and possibly could have won you a league. Now, I had him on my bench in the Guillotine League only because I'm rocking Tyreek Hill, A.J. Brown, and Amon Ra. So I feel like that's a good decision for that. But Olave's definitely a guy that you should have in your lineup every week. And most of the time, and I would say thinking back into August, most drafts he was going right at the end, the 1-2 turn or into the second round, right at the beginning there, because I felt like he was a guy that people were really targeting. So, anyhow, let's just start by saying, I fell victim to my own success with a few things. I overthought a few things in my guillotine league last week. And listen, this happens. Like I may have fucked myself because of it. I really didn't want to, but listen, stuff like that does happen. I started Bijan Robinson and DeAndre Hopkins, and let's just say like they're not in my lineup this week. It's, one piece of advice I can give you is trust your gut. The experts can tell you what to do, but you're in the playoffs for a reason. And I know we've seen a lot of quotes the last week, right? Like it takes skill to make it to the playoffs, but it takes a little bit of luck to win. Well, listen, it's a combination of both along the way. You gotta have your guys pop off on the right times, on the right weeks against the right teams, making the right moves on the waiver wire. You've got to get lucky with guys not getting injured. And you also need to be pretty smart about who to start. And I think sometimes we overanalyze the numbers, and that kind of puts too much in the pot, too many factors to be able to consider. So don't ignore what got you there in the first place, and make sure that you're not ignoring your gut because of perceived potential beneficial matchups, right? Like what ifs could happen, but the guys that got you there, pretty good chance that they're going to be the ones that can carry you to a title. So, unless crazy things happen, right? I had Keenan Allen on my team. Justin Herbert gets injured. He's out for the season. That really sucks. But, he's just not going to be the same without Herbert, right? Like Herbert was feeding him 10, 12 targets a game. He's just not going to get that from Easton. So, it is what it is. But, anyhow, let's roll into things here. We'll get this going, and then we'll be able to watch some games for you guys. So, first game we've got here, we've got Cincinnati at Pittsburgh. Now, the story here has to be like the fall of the steel curtain, right? And followed by the rise of Jake Browning, right? You see what happened this year with Burrow, and Browning steps right in. Like this dude has been very, very solid in replacement, and there's not a lot of teams in the NFL that have a guy that can step in for their starter that is the highest paid player in the league, that can play the way Jake Browning's playing. Like you're seeing him, he's on fire. So in terms of fantasy this week, listen, I'm starting T. Higgins. We already got the news. Jamar Chase is out, right? That's T. Higgins is going to be the number one target. They're going to feed him early and often, and yeah, they're going to go to him real fast, real quick. The other guy I'm thinking of this week is Jalen Warren. I just think he's going to get the bulk of carries this week, especially after Najee Harris's fumble last week. Also, DJ Reader hitting IR for Cincinnati. That's a big deal for Jalen Warren. It's one less guy that's very tenacious after getting after ball carriers in the middle that Cincinnati does not have. So definitely like Jalen Warren this week, and I like his upside. Some of the guys I'm fading, obviously Jamar Chase, right? He's out for the week. And just an update on that, he's nursing an AC joint, which is not an easy injury to come back from. Pretty difficult. So I think they're making the right decision by holding him out, letting him rest up and heal up. And Jake Browning, I'm also fading this week. And it's just, listen, he's been on an absolute tear lately. I'm just not sure it continues against this tough Pittsburgh defense. Um, I know they're missing Minka Fitzpatrick. I get that. They could possibly be down Cam Hayward as well, but it looks like he's trending towards playing. It's just with him being down Jamar Chase, I'm not putting him in there this week, right? It gives him so much more potential and upside being able to throw the ball to Chase, get it to him early, and he's able to get those yards after catch. Without him there, I just don't like the matchup as much for Browning. Another guy I'm fading, Mixon. Listen, he's been pretty solid this year, especially with all the news kind of swirling around him at the beginning of the year. But I definitely do not like him in this matchup. I think Pittsburgh's a really tough team to run the ball against. They're very stingy on defense, and I just don't see it changing. They kept him in check big time the last time they played. I don't see it being a different story this time. They don't have that threat of Joe Burrow there and Jamar Chase to be like, all right, we're not going to put 10 guys in the box and stop you. Um, Other guys I'm fading, listen, Pittsburgh receivers, yep, no, like Mason Rudolph's at quarterback. This is just, it's an ugly look for them. Also, Najee Harris, listen, he had a good game last time. But with that fumble last week, I don't feel comfortable starting him this week, especially with fantasy playoffs on the line. That does not feel good. There's one league that I do have him going in. It's because I'm out of running backs and I don't have anyone else left after injuries and stuff like that. So, but listen, if there's any way I can avoid playing him, I'm going to do it. All right, so let's go ahead and move on here. So we've got Buffalo at the Chargers. This is the other game that we have going tonight. So listen, Bills are 8-6. They need a win to kind of make their playoff dreams a reality. They've been playing very good football lately, and last week they just absolutely steamrolled Dallas, which I don't know if that's more a testament to how Buffalo's playing and how good they are, or how bad Dallas is on the road. But um, Chargers, listen, they're going to be likely tanking to try to get as high of a draft pick as they can get. Keenan Allen's out this week, so that I just think there's no sense in playing him at all, like trying to force him in there with the season lost, right? Like this is a Keenan Allen's a tough guy. He'll play through injury, but just with the season already gone and no opportunity to make the playoffs, there's no sense in running him out there. So some of the guys I'm starting in terms of fantasy, I'll definitely be starting Josh Allen. Like he had a down week last week, but he just got scripted out of it, right? Like they ran the ball, what, 47, 49 times, something like that. Like an absurd number. He only threw 15 passes all game. That's likely not going to happen against this awful Chargers defense. And one thing I will say, like, yeah, they're down Bosa. They've had just a shitty year, but like there's a lot of talent on this defense. I don't think they should be as bad as they are. And you've kind of seen two different parallels take since like earlier in the season when we thought Denver had like a terrible defense. They've remedied a lot of those issues, whereas the Chargers we thought were going to be good and started off decent and then all of a sudden have just tanked and been terrible. And now they're the team that gives up a boatload of points to the Raiders. Like it just I don't know. And I think Brandon Staley had a lot to do with that too. I don't know. Let's see this team without him in a full season. I'm curious who they bring in as a new coach, all of this stuff. So, uh, long story short, Josh Allen, I'm definitely starting him. James Cook, you're silly not to start this guy. Like, he's been arguably the best running back in football, not named McCaffrey, over the second half of the season. He's been a stud since they got rid of Ken Dorsey, which I actually am a fan of Ken Dorsey. So, sad to see him go, but since he left, James Cook's been getting fed. So, Stephon Diggs, listen, he should have a good chance to be able to put up points this week. And I know a lot of people were disappointed and that drafted him because he's kind of had a down year. But I think that's more of a testament to the Bills team just having a down year and kind of being wildly inconsistent as they play. Uh, but I would be running Stephon Diggs out there if I had him on my roster. Some of the guys I'm fading this week, Dalton Kincaid, listen, he's cooled off lately. He's a little banged up too. And since Dawson Knox has come back, he's just not getting as many looks, as many targets, all of that. I just don't trust him this week as it seems like this new Bills team is seriously committed to running the football, and they're not going to be looking his way as often. I do like his prospects for next year in Dynasty. I think he's a very intriguing target, all of that. But just this week, not high on him. Gabe Davis too. Listen, 2 zeros in a week, 2 zeros in 2 weeks in a row. Like it's not good. And if you look at his game logs through the season, this is usually what happens. He doesn't usually put up zeros too often, but he'll have games of like 2 points, 4 points, 5 points, 30 points, 4 points, 6 points, 7 points, 30 points. Like this is the way Gabe Davis is. I'm hoping it's not going to be the breakout week for him, but I can't bring myself to start him this week. So Eckler too. Listen, it's been a really, really rough season for him. I'm just not sure it gets any better this week. I know Buffalo, you've been able to run against them, but I just I think the Chargers are going to be throwing the ball so much this game, trying to play catch up. I think Eckler just gets phased out of that, or if he does get any work, it's just going to be very limited in the passing game. You've even seen him splitting snaps with Spiller, Kelly, and it just hasn't looked good for him. All right, moving on here. We've got Indy at Atlanta. Now, listen, the Colts are 8-6. They need a win. Atlanta just had an awful loss to Carolina. Like it just there's some losses that you take and you're like, okay, that's a divisional opponent. We can understand that. They see them twice a year, but they just looked absolutely terrible. And now they state they're going to return to Heineke, which I don't know why they moved away from him. I guess he wasn't playing up to snuff, but Ritter is exponentially a worse quarterback than Heineke is, in my opinion. Plus, Heineke loves Bush Light, and I guess he got fined on a team plane for drinking Bush Light. That is an epic story. So good for him. Uh, but listen, I'm kind of bitter too, based off of Bijan's awful performance last week against like one of the worst rushing defenses in football, for him to end up with as few points as he did, it just, I don't know, it just really soured me on him. Um, the only guy I'm starting this week is Michael Pittman, and kind of alarming that when I read the article about him that he said he didn't even remember the hit from, I think it's Kazee, I think that's his name, the Pittsburgh safety. Like that, that's kind of scary to hear that and to know that he's trotting back out there. But listen, like this guy's just been hot all year. I know people probably have concern about it, but he's going to get his 8 to 9 targets that he's been getting all season. If you've got him on your roster, you have to trot him out there. So some of the guys I'm fading. Listen, Jonathan Taylor. I know they're going to test out his thumb on Sunday. I just don't like the sound of that. Right, like what makes him great as a running back is him being able to handle the ball well and all of that. When you have thumbs that are hurt and banged up and bruised and broken, all of that, like I don't know, man. It's for me, it just does not sound good and not someone I want to trust going into this game. One hit and the day's over for him. And yeah, you could say that with any guy, right? Like Dak Prescott could get hit, game's over for him, right? Like that could happen, but with this in particular, JT just had surgery on it. I'm fairly certain, and like I don't know if I really trust that going into this game. I'm also fading Zach Moss too. Like the matchup just indicates like he could be good this week, as the Colts like. They're going to be putting up points and they're going to revert to the run game to kind of grind that clock against Atlanta. But I just, with the uncertainty around Taylor's thumb, it's just too risky for me and not something I really want to dip into. Bijan, yeah, like I mean, I don't. For me, what I saw last week of it wasn't just the fumble; it was the way he was phased out of the game. Algier and Patterson, like okay, so Bijan has this big run. I believe it was like the second quarter, like around 15 yards, and almost scores. They bring Patterson in, and he runs it in. Like that to me says that they, not that they don't trust him around the goal line, but just that they're not fully committed to him and giving him all the touches. They've got three decent running backs in that backfield. Now, I think he's the best athlete out of all of them. But Arthur Smith, sometimes I just don't know what they're doing. And it's too bad because I really do like Arthur Smith. I've seen him on the Pat McAfee show. He seems like a good guy. But when I watch what he does in games and the way they kind of strategize, it's brutal to see sometimes. So really, really rough. But listen, in this week, I wrote down in my notes earlier this week that I wouldn't care if Bijan was running against Indiana University. I'm benching him this week just because of last week and how dirty he did me. But also the last two guys, Pitts and London, nope. I'm not trusting them. I know Heineke's in there, but this week is just it's playoff week. I'm not trusting either one of them. All right, so we've got Seattle at Tennessee. Seattle's sitting at 7-7. They're still trying for that sixth or seventh playoff spot in the NFC. Listen, that win against Philly was impressive, especially with Drew Lock coming down on the last drive to be able to drop that ball in the bucket for JSN. But I just don't know if it's in the cards for them to be able to make the playoffs. Tennessee, listen, they're already thinking about next year. They're looking at a top 10 pick for next year, so they're probably already in that mode. But I will say Tennessee is a team that loves to play spoiler. They're very good at it. Mike Vrabel is going to have his guys prepared. Even if they're not the better team, you're still going to have to fight like hell to beat them. So I hope Seattle doesn't overlook them. Some of the guys I'm starting this week, DK Metcalf. Listen, he's a cog in this offense and a real playmaker each week. You saw how pivotal he was on that final drive. Yes, he didn't catch the game winning touchdown, but he caught three big balls on the way on down the field for Drew Lock. So I definitely think he's a guy that you got to float out there this week. Ken Walker, listen, I know he was listed as questionable. Didn't practice Thursday. It's just kind of been up and down for him this week. But He looked good for the first time in a couple weeks against Philly. I know Tennessee's let up a lot on the ground the last two games, and I just think it's a favorable matchup for him this week. Some of the guys I'm fading, listen, Traylon Burks, DeAndre Hopkins. I know Traylon Burks just came back. I know he's been injured most of the season and stuff. I'm just not a Burks fan. And I was buying into him more with Levis there. But then Levis ends up getting hurt. It just does not look good for him. So Hopkins too, like yeah, he hit me hard last week, but I'm not going back to the hand that hit me. Like I'm just not doing it this week, not in the playoffs. Derrick Henry, I know like there's all these rumors that like has the king fallen, all of this, but I'm not sure that's the case. There's a lot of issues on this team, but like going into the last 1 or 2 weeks of fantasy, I'm just not putting my faith in Henry. It doesn't seem like they're really feeding him like they usually do around this time of year. And I'm not trusting it as much as I am other guys that I'm seeing on the waiver wire and other guys on my bench. Um, I'm also fading Lockett and JSN. I just don't want them this week. It's not that I don't think they can put up points. It's just that I feel like there's better options available that we can be looking at this week. All right, let's move on here. So we've got Detroit at Minnesota. Like full disclosure, like I've been talking for a few weeks. I've been talking a lot of shit the past 2 weeks about CJ Gardner Johnson coming back, and each week he doesn't. So, like, I'm going to stop making predictions about this guy. Hopefully, we see him soon because, I mean, even Dan Campbell was saying he's got like mutant genes that he was able to heal. I think he had a torn pectoral and spent like most of the season on IR, but this team desperately needs him to come back, and he would instantly be a playmaker on defense for them. Don't forget, he led the league in picks last year, so it's not just a nobody or a safety that they're bringing in. Like this guy's legit. Um, and listen, Detroit beat up on Denver last week. Goff ended up looking stellar. He threw 5 touchdowns, looked really solid. Minnesota lost that killer game in overtime to Cincinnati. Like they're sitting at 7-7, but they're on the outside looking in on the NFC playoff spots. They just don't have the hold like they did before on it, and that does not bode well for them. Some of the guys that I'm starting, listen, I've been referring to it all year as Detroit's starting five: Goff, Amon Ra, Laporta, Montgomery, and Gibbs. Like, yes, Montgomery hasn't been putting up the big points that you guys have been hoping for, but he's getting the opportunities. If you look at his game logs week in and week out, he's getting multiple touches, double digit touches every single week. Yeah, the weeks he was hurt, obviously he's not getting them that week, but he's averaging double digit touches every single week. You got to float him out there. And at least give him an opportunity. JJ, listen, if you have to start that guy if he suits up. He's just that type of playmaker that if he's going out there, he's going to put up points. So you have to do it. Ty Chandler's another one. Listen, he's been on an absolute tear lately. Like he had a great game last week. He averaged, I think it was like almost 6 yards per carry. Really, really solid from him. And make no mistake, even if Alexander Madison is healthy, Ty Chandler's the number one running back in Minnesota. He's an absolute stud. He's a great athlete, and he's the guy that they need to be running the ball with there. Um, Also, Jordan Addison. Listen, I kind of called this at the beginning of the year. He was one of my guys at the beginning that I had put together, but he's just had a great season. Like not only from a fantasy perspective, but like he, as an NFL player, has been very, very good. Um, he's been very decent when JJ's been out, but also he plays better when JJ is there. And that's another thing that I will say. Like, he's got a legit shot at 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns. Like, those are well within his range. And he's got, what, 3 games left in the season? Like, that's a stellar rookie season for him to be able to have. And that's without his starting quarterback. He's on his third quarterback now, and he's still figuring out ways to get it done. Some of the guys I'm fading, like I mentioned, like Alexander Madison, I know he was questionable, but like he's not the number one running back there anymore. Chandler's going to get the bulk of the carries, all of that. Jamison Williams too. He just hasn't blossomed. Like, yeah, he had 7 targets last week. I get that, but he just hasn't gotten it done for them. Maybe this is the beginning of him kind of coming out and like carrying them into the playoffs, but I don't know. Right now, I'm not risking it in the fantasy playoffs. All right. So the game everyone wants to know about, Washington at the Jets. Sorry, guys. This is going to be a terrible one. But listen, both these teams have been eliminated from playoff contention. Like, not really surprised about this. And there's not much for them to really play for except pride or, I guess, higher draft picks. But both teams are going to have a top 10 pick in the draft coming up. I mean, Rodgers is shut down for the year. I think it's a great decision. Like, there's no point in him coming back. Little confused as to why they activated him to the roster to release another guy, and then it kind of took a roster spot, and then they decided, yeah, we're not going to bring him. But they kind of do what they want to do, and that's why they're doing what they do, and I'm doing what I do. So some of the guys I'm starting this week, Terry McLaurin. Listen, he's just been playing really well lately. Yes, they benched Howell. I understand that, but he came alive on some deep balls with Brissett, and it looked really good doing that. I'm going to keep riding that, even against this Jets D. You were able to see, you know, not Sauce Gardner. Who is it? Reed on the other side there. He got beat by for a few balls last game. Jalen Waddle ended up getting his long touchdown pass on him with that, and looked really good doing so. Like Sauce isn't a guy that's going to follow a guy all over the field. The Jets defense, they stay as they are, and they're going to play you as they play you. So. I really think McLaurin, they're going to find a way to get him open, get the ball in his hands, at least for a couple plays. One flex play this week that I will say is Brees Hall. Against this porous Commanders D, I just think that, they just gave up 200 yards on the ground to the Rams. I mean, Brees Hall sucked last week, don't get me wrong, but the whole team sucked last week. And if you need him, he's definitely worth a flex play this week. You got to float him out there. One of the guys some of the guys I'm fading rather, Garrett Wilson, Jahan Dotson. Listen, Garrett Wilson, I feel bad for this dude. Like I picked him in one league as a first round pick, um, at the end of the first round, and man, Rodgers going down. What, 4 plays into the season, that absolutely crushed his value. I knew it was never going to be the same. He's fought. You haven't heard him complain. Like he's tried to do what he could. Let's just hope better for next year for him. Like he's a good kid and he's really talented. I want to see him be able to produce next year. All right, so we got Green Bay at Carolina. Some interesting news that just came up on this. We'll get to in a second, but Green Bay's still fighting for a playoff spot. I mean, Carolina's playing teams tough, like, and I guess they like playing spoiler, right? Like they're gonna beat Atlanta last week, and I mean they didn't look great in doing so, but they beat them. I hope Green Bay doesn't sleep on this game and it would be a little disappointing if they do, but I wouldn't be totally surprised. One of the guys I'm starting this week, Jaden Reed. Like, yes, I know he's questionable. He's battling the toe and the chest injury. He didn't practice on Thursday. He was limited Friday. Actually, no, he didn't practice Thursday or Friday this week, but they're hoping that he's going to be able to come in. I just think if he suits up, and you're going to have to monitor this before game time to see what happens, he just has too much potential. He's been an absolute stud this year as a rookie, scoring touchdowns almost every week. Like he can do so much, whether it's the end around plays. He reminds me a lot of Debo, the way he plays, and Green Bay uses him to perfection. So if he suits up, you definitely got to run him out there. Also, Aaron Jones, listen, he was listed as questionable with the knee and the finger. He practiced Thursday in a limited capacity. I believe the same thing on Friday, too. It sucks because I'm playing against him this week in fantasy, but it's a strong play against this Carolina defense. I know Bijan didn't get it done last week, but I'm hoping, telling you guys Aaron Jones should be able to run the ball well against this really really crappy Carolina D. Some of the guys I'm fading this week. Listen, Watson, he's listed as questionable, so I'm not a fan of Christian Watson at all, even when he's healthy. But all right, like yeah. Also Romeo Dobbs. Mingo, this week we're going to be fading them. AJ Dillon too. I know he practiced in a limited capacity this week, but I think it's going to be Aaron Jones that's going to get the bulk of the carries this week. A sleeper that I'll trot out there just in case Reed doesn't play. I'd consider Dontavian Wicks. I know he's listed as questionable too. He's battling an injury, but him or Tucker Craft. Tucker Craft is and if Wicks and Reed don't play, Tucker Craft skyrockets because he's got an opportunity to catch a lot of balls. So, and he's done very good filling in for Luke Musgrave. All right, so we got Cleveland at Houston. Both teams are just banged up. I mean, you look through these rosters, and there's a lot of people that are hurt on these rosters. So, listen, Cleveland, they're in position to be the wild card team, right? Like at least one of them. Houston, they still have a shot at their division if they end up winning this game. So. Guys, I'm starting. I'm looking at Amari Cooper and David Njoku. They've come alive with Flacco at the helm. Like a lot of people are Flacco doubters, and yes, he throws some picks, and I get that he's a little risky with his throws. Like the guy's won a Super Bowl though, and he won a Super Bowl in the Manning and the Brady era and Roethlisberger. So like he's not a nobody. I know they had a good defense, they had a good team around him, but the guy's won a Super Bowl. He knows how to be able to win big games, and when you go into the playoffs with a good defense, and uh, you know, I'd take him over a lot of the quarterbacks in this league. So, even if he's throwing a couple picks a game, he's still going to throw the ball down the field, try to give you a chance to win. But the way he's been able to play with Njoku in particular, like he's been awesome with him. Their connection is great. You look at it like he threw for almost 400 yards last week. I, I know people are concerned about it. I understand the skepticism, but you're not taking as much risk when you play Amari Cooper or David Njoku as you are if you were starting Joe Flacco. So, um, in terms of guys I'm fading, listen, Ford and Hunt, I know both are listed as questionable, but I just don't like them this week against Houston's D. Houston's not as easy to run on as they have been in the past, in past seasons. So, definitely don't like them this week. Flacco, listen, it's too tough with the turnovers. Like I think there's better waiver wire options out there as well. Uh, Stroud, I think he was ruled out for this week. It just I know he's still in concussion protocol, still trying to make it back from that. Noah Brown and Nico Collins, they were both listed as questionable too. Like they had limited practice this week, but I just don't want to touch them this week, especially without Stroud there. All right. It seems like we got a bunch of injuries going on in these games. But next, we've got Jacksonville at Tampa Bay. Now, both of these teams are looking to win their division. Jacksonville's trying to hold off Indy. Tampa Bay's trying to hold off New Orleans and Atlanta. Jacksonville, they're trying to stop their 3-game skid. Tampa Bay is trying to extend their 3-game winning streak. So there's a lot of polar opposites we've got here. I mean, with New Orleans losing to the Rams, Tampa Bay's in the driver's seat in the NFC South. Like it's really their division for the taking. I don't think Atlanta's going to win it. So I think it's Tampa Bay's chance to step up. And Baker's been playing very, very well this year. For them and giving them shots to win every week. Rashad White's been an absolute beast. A lot of people were doubting him at the beginning of the year, and doubting this Bucks team, but they've really come together and played very well. Um, listen, guys, I'm starting in terms of fantasy. Trevor Lawrence, listen, if he plays, it sucks because I'm playing against him as well, but he was sidelined from practice Thursday. I think he was from Friday as well. He's still in the concussion protocol. We may not find out until the end of the day today for you guys, or possibly into tomorrow. But you really got to monitor this if you have him. If he's a go, you have to play him against this Tampa Bay defense. Like they're giving up so many yards through the air, and this would be a perfect start for him. Calvin Ridley's another one. Listen, he's been hit or miss like all season, and I get that, but like him starting is contingent upon Lawrence starting as well. I think he'd be an excellent play this week as long as Lawrence is a go. Mike Evans, I mean, it's a good matchup for him, but also, do you remember last year? Like this guy's been rip roaring crazy the last month, scoring touchdowns and everything. He's gonna get another 1,000 yard season with a new quarterback again. Like it just, I don't know. For many years, like I feel like 10 years I've been doubting Mike Evans, and I've been wrong every year. He's proven me wrong. So, and everyone remembers the playoff game last year where he scored 55, 56 points in the final week. So, definitely trot him out there again. Chris Godwin, yep, definitely a stud as well. Rashad White, yep. Again, as I mentioned, he's been on a roll this year. He's been a top five back. I'm pretty sure he's like the second or third running back in the league in fantasy. So maybe number four, depending on league scoring. But one of the mini fades that I've got is Etienne. Listen, he's had a good season and he's a good back. I get that. This defense is just pretty good against running backs, especially the last 2 weeks. Like I don't know. And if Lawrence isn't there, it's going to make it that much harder for him. They're going to stack the box on him with Beathard running quarterback. So, I definitely it's like a mini fade for Etienne depending on other guys playing. All right, so we got Arizona and Chicago. Arizona's been eliminated. Chicago's going to be soon. We know that's going to happen, but both these teams could look drastically different next year. Guys, I'm starting Justin Fields. Like this one hurts to say because he can really screw you over in a week. And if if I recall last year for the playoffs, I started him and we had that first week of the rather second week of the playoffs because I had a bye the first week where it was really really cold. There was like 4 or 5 games that were going to be like single digits. And I trotted him out there and I said, you know what? I'm going to take a chance. Like, he's going to do it against Buffalo. He's going to show him what's up. And he went out and he scored like 5 points. And he totally screwed me in fantasy. And I held a grudge about him. Then I ended up drafting him this past year because I was like, things are going to change and all this. So I understand, like, don't worry about last year. Don't focus on that. This matchup is insane for him. Arizona's giving up a ton of yards through the air. They're giving up yards on the ground. Like he's going to be really good in this game, and if you have him, you need to be starting him. DJ Moore as well. Like you have to start him as again. Like he's their best playmaker outside of Justin Fields, and he hasn't had he hasn't had less than 8 targets in the last 5 games, which is really important for him because it shows that he's getting not only open, but he's getting fed as well. Trey McBride as well. Like this dude's just been legit. He's arguably the best offensive player that Arizona has outside of Kyler Murray. And that hurts me to say because Marquise Brown is just kind of faded. James Conner's a good player, but I don't know. Trey McBride has been that dude. So, speaking of guys I'm fading this week, listen, Kyler, I mean, there's an argument that could be made for that he's going to play well against this Bears D. But this Bears defense has been playing very, very well the last month. They've given up 17 points or less in 4 out of their last 5 games. Kyler may get the yards, but I'm not sure he's going to convert on the touchdowns. And like, that's kind of what you need with him. Um, and also James Conner, listen, Bears rushing defense has been legit. I mean, except against Detroit, who's a very good rushing team, like they've kept everyone else kind of in check. So I'm going to say no to Connor this week. What do we got here? Fly Nelly fly. One PPR, need two out of Aaron Jones, Swift, Zeke, and Ty Chandler. Oh, dude, this is easy. I would definitely run Aaron Jones as long as you got to make sure he's not questionable and he is going to be active. But Aaron Jones has a sick matchup. I had mentioned it before, and Ty Chandler has been a stud this year. You got to run him out there. I would say definitely Aaron Jones and Ty Chandler. Um, they've just Ty Chandler. You're going to see him next year. He could possibly be the rushing champ next year. He's that good and that talented. So, I would say definitely those two. Zeke, I'm just not confident he's going to get the amount of touches, and I think he's playing against a pretty good Denver D. And DeAndre Swift, listen, I know Philly's playing against the Giants this week. We're going to get into this in a little bit. I just The Giants have been playing different lately. And Philly has been playing different lately. And Philly has not been playing well. So that's one of the things that's a little concerning for them. But Aaron Jones, great matchup this week, and Ty Chandler as well. I think both of them have a really good shot at putting up some serious points for you. Okay, last two guys I was going to mention, just James Conner, definitely fading him because of how good this Bears defense is. And last one here, Marquise Brown, like his production's just fallen off. Okay, let's see. 1 point PPR flex. We got Trey McBride, Jaden Reed, or D Hop. Listen, I'm very biased on this because D Hop screwed me last week. I don't know if he did the same to you, but it felt I'm still suffering from third degree burns from that. If I would say if you're going 1 point PPR for this, I would definitely say Trey McBride. But Jaden Reed does have good quality to him. I just think McBride gets fed so early and so often. I think he's the only target that Kyler is going to look at this game. You could see him getting double digit targets in this game. So if it were me and I had McBride, Jaden Reed, or D Hop, I'm definitely going McBride. D Hop, we're not even sure who his quarterback is anymore. It's that rough of a situation. So, all right, next game that we're going to get into here, just a few more before we end up calling it for the day. So we got Dallas at Miami. Listen, this game's been on the docket. This is a big one for these two, right? Like we've been looking forward to this one for a couple weeks now. I mean, the Cowboys finally look legit, and as soon as we start talking about them like they're doing well, they do what they did in Orchard Park, and it was kind of embarrassing to see that. Miami, listen, they're hoping for that number 2 seed in the AFC. It's honestly the biggest test for them all year. Conveniently, both of these teams were tested when they played against Buffalo, and both of them did not get the job done. Buffalo beat up both of these teams. So, I'm going to look for Miami to try to replicate and run the ball hard against Dallas. I do have some slight concerns because Miami's offensive line is seriously banged up, and so are their running backs. But there should be a ton of points scored in this game. So that's what we're hoping for. Starting, listen, if you have a Dolphin or a Cowboy and they're active, you are starting them most likely. Dak, Pollard, Lamb, Ferguson, you're definitely running them out there. Tua, Reek, like if he plays, right, like it seems like he's trending towards playing. You're gonna throw Tyreek out there if he's active. Waddle, listen, his value goes up a boatload if Tyreek doesn't play. But if Tyreek does play, he's still got value out there, especially against this defense because Mike McCarthy's going to try to take away Tyreek. So I definitely think you're going to be looking to throw Waddle out there as well. Achan, listen, I know he's been banged up. So is Mostert. Seems like Mostert's got a better chance of starting than of playing than Achan does, but after what happened last week, like these guys are going to be turbo as fuck. Like it's going to be, ears pinned back and running the ball hard against this Dallas D. They're going to try to break them. Especially with Mostert, what's he got? 20 touchdowns on the season. You got to be starting him if he's active. So there's an argument too. I will say that can be made for Brandon Cooks in this matchup because I definitely think he has value here. I know they're going to try to put Ramsey on Lamb. I'm pretty sure that's going to happen. They're going to try to take away Ferguson, but I think Brandon Cooks provides some value, and Dak Prescott's been finding him lately. So be on the lookout for that. All right, so we got New England at Denver. Listen, the Patriots, they've been flirting with the idea of playing spoiler for teams recently. We've got a few of those, right? Tennessee, Carolina, also New England. And there's no one better than playing spoiler when Bill Belichick's your head coach, right? He just knows how to be able to scheme people out and play people tough. So Denver, listen, they just dropped a big game to the Lions. I thought that was a big test for them, and their defense got crushed. But Denver still has a lot to play for with 3 weeks left, and they're really trying to make the playoffs. It didn't look good for them losing that game because it really sets them back, but they still have an outside chance to be able to make the playoffs. So Let's see them get back to work this week against New England. Guys, I'm starting in fantasy. Cortland Sutton. Listen, he's been getting a ton of targets. It's hard not to like him in fantasy, and he's clearly Russell's favorite target. Don't forget about this guy when they were trying to shop him at the beginning of the year. All these trade rumors and everything, and favoring Jerry Judy, and then all of a sudden the script flipped. And Sutton's getting all these touchdowns and all these targets, and Judy is just like, getting yelled at on the sideline by Steve Smith. It's kind of funny. So, guys, I'm fading this week. Listen, Hunter Henry, they just ruled him out, so obviously I'm fading him. Russ, Javante, Zeke, fly Nelly fly. Like as you just mentioned about Zeke, like I'm fading him this week. I just don't think it's a good matchup against Denver for him. Ramondra also, I believe he was signaled as out as well, so he's not going to be playing either. All right, let's move on here. We got Las Vegas at Kansas City. So Kansas City, like they just seem to be free falling. Like even when they're winning, it just looks bad, right? Like unless Kansas City drops the next three games, like they're likely going to win the AFC West. We have to be serious about that. I'm just not sure how much longer they can deal with the poor wide receiver play. Like it just looks bad, and I've started to notice as I'm watching them, Andy Reid's moving more towards using the tight ends because they can actually catch the ball and they don't drop everything that comes their way. Um, so I think it's a good game plan for them. It also gives them a better opportunity to kind of disguise what they're doing in terms of running the ball. So I think that also helps as well. Now, Las Vegas, listen, they're gonna be enjoying what they did to the Chargers for a while. Like it doesn't matter if they lose the next three games, they're still gonna be feeling that win because that was really big for them. And plus, they got Staley fired. Like there's a lot to that. So they're just not going to be able to do what they did against the Chargers this week against Kansas City. I don't think. This is an Andy Reid coach team. It just doesn't happen to him like that. But I don't think by any means that this game will be easy for Kansas City. Not at all. In terms of people I'm starting, listen, Travis Kelsey, like I feel okay doing so. Not only did he play well against Las Vegas earlier in the year, but like I feel like he's due. He hasn't had a great season, right? Partly because Mahomes hasn't had a great season and this team hasn't had a great season. But I definitely think Kelsey's the number one tight end to roll out there this week. Rasheed Rice has over the last month of football has definitely made himself a top 10 receiver, not only in fantasy but in the NFL. Like he's a very good route runner. He catches the ball, and if you catch the ball for Patrick Mahomes, like he's going to look your way more often. He's looked really good for them. Pacheco should be coming back. I mean, he's going to be fed. I still, I don't know. I still think they need to find a better running back in the offseason, but I think Pacheco's a better change of pace back. But in this league where it seems like guys like McCaffrey are kind of like a dime a dozen, you really, um, or more of a rarity. Like I think you need like that hard pound running back to pair with Pacheco to keep him fresh and be able to like really get the most efficiency out of him. So Devontae also is a guy that I'm running out there. Listen, I think he's the best chance the Raiders have of competing. If you've got him on your roster, you're definitely putting him in there. Some of the guys I'm fading, listen, Tony and McKinnon, they were both ruled out. So obviously both of them. Myers and Jacobs, listen, they were both questionable. They didn't practice Thursday, limited in Friday. And it just, I'm just not crazy about them in this matchup. Mahomes, listen, he's another guy I'm fading. He has not had a good year. It just not from fantasy perspective and not where people were drafting him. You saw some people drafting him like at the beginning of the second round and they were very disappointed. I think like he could be better this game. It might help with Max Crosby being questionable, but I don't know. We'll see what ends up happening with that. All right, let's take a look here. So, all right, we've got pick two London, Nico, and Flowers. Listen, Flowers, this is what I'll say. I'm not I'm not concerned at all about Flowers. Harbaugh talked about him, said he's definitely going to be there Monday. He's definitely the lock in for me. My concern is that Nico Collins is banged up and Stroud was already ruled out. So that's concerning. London, I think. Now, listen, I'm fading London this week and I'm fading Nico, but I think picking between those two, I think Drake London will have a better chance with Tyler Heineke throwing the ball than he will with Desmond Ritter. So if it were me and I was in that position, I would probably put Flowers and Drake London out there for you, bud. That's what I would be looking at. All right, guys, let's get through these last two games that we've got here. So we've got the Giants at Philly. Uh, Philly, listen, they're dropping three straight. That's just tough for them. And like you even saw it on the Kelsey brothers podcast. Like this is hitting Jason Kelsey hard. Like they got called with the absolutely, brother. Anything you need. If you got more questions, shoot them at me. Let me know. You could just tell by like the amount of passion in his voice that goes into this game and the passion that goes into the growing those eyebrows that he's got. This guy cares a lot, and it really sucks to see them going through that because they've got a lot of really good and talented guys in that locker room. It just seems like their defense, they almost remind me on defense of like the old Indianapolis Colts teams that couldn't stop anybody. Like it's awful. You could, I feel like you could bring Alabama in there and they could throw against them. It's just, that's unrealistic. But I'm just saying, like, they give up so much yardage. It's crazy. So, listen. So, anyhow, like, the Giants, they've won 3 out of 5. They look, they've been looking better than they were at the beginning of the season. And I think that's a testament to the guys in that locker room trying to turn stuff around and not leave the season on a down note. I don't know if they're going to win this game. I really don't think it's in their favor. But I mean, Philly's going to look to come out and try to punch them in the mouth, especially after like losing to those teams. Now, let me just say that Philly lost to playoff teams, right? Like Seattle's on the verge of being a playoff team, but Dallas and San Francisco are like widely considered the top two teams in the NFC. Philly's in that category as well. But maybe Detroit too. I don't want to insult Detroit, but like those are the teams that are very good in the NFC that people respect. Philly's not dropping games to Carolina or teams like that. So I think those tests are important for them, and I think they will learn from them. But they definitely need some help on that defense. Some of the guys that I'm starting this week. Listen, Hurts. I know he played sick last week. It should be better for you this week. He still ended up with good points last week, even playing sick. So if anyone's complaining, it's kind of sad. But I mean it. If the Giants can hang this in this game, like he'll need to air it out more, which could be more beneficial. AJ Brown, listen, I'm just hoping he's going to get more opportunities and be more efficient with those opportunities. Like him and Devonta Smith almost had identical stat lines last week, and it was just kind of bothersome to see that, kind of frustrating. I'm just hoping it changes this game. So DeAndre Swift, listen, I had mentioned before that like I didn't like him as some of the other guys that I did in this. I just think the Giants are going to play them tough. He's within reach of 1,000 yards. I think he's going to get it this week, but I don't know. Like I don't know if he's going to get enough opportunities. I hope he gets it because I think that would be really good for him. I just don't know if this Giants game is going to give him the opportunities for them to kind of ground and pound the whole time. And it's tough for a running back when you have someone like Jalen Hurts running the ball. So he's like in between my start and fades, right? Uh, Guys I'm fading, Devonta Smith. Listen, the only concern I have for him is like he could get schemed out if they get up by a couple scores. They're not going to be throwing the ball; they're going to be running it more, kind of milking that clock. Also, Barkley. Listen, Philly's defense is weaker against the pass than the ground game. I just don't like him against this front seven. I think he's a great athlete. I think he can make plays and all of that, but The Giants line is kind of banged up too. They've had a couple weeks of subpar play. I I don't know. I just don't think that he's going to get it done this week against Philly. And Goddard, nope. Like I've got AJ Brown, so I like him a lot more than I do Goddard's chances. All right. And the last game we've got here, we've got Baltimore at San Francisco. Now, this is the matchup we've wanted all year, like a potential Super Bowl matchup. Two of the top offenses against two of the top defenses. Like, this is just the fantasy seasons are going to come down to this game. And I'm hoping it's going to be high scoring. I hope it's not a blowout one way or the other because it's going to really tip the scales in terms of fantasy this particular week. So, guys, I'm starting McCaffrey. Like, he's the MVP. Like, regardless of what critics say about Purdy, Purdy's had a great year. Love seeing what he did. But, like, McCaffrey is that dude, and you need him in your lineup. If you don't have him in your lineup, like don't be crazy. Don't get foolish. Definitely play him no matter the matchup. It doesn't matter. Debo, listen, he's just been playing way too well lately. Like you have to start him as well. Purdy, like he doesn't pose a lot of risk because the majority of his passing yards come as yards after the catch. So unless you have a better option on your bench, which typically you don't, the way Purdy's played this year, he's been an MVP. Like he should be in your lineup every single week. But I would feel comfortable starting him. Um, he knows how to be able to get the ball in his playmakers' hands. McCaffrey, Kittle, Debo, even Ayuk, right? Like he doesn't need to push the ball really far down the field. He lets them do that, right? He gets it to them in space, lets them do the rest. So definitely think he's a safe play this week. Kittle, I really like Kittle this week. Just because I think Harbaugh's going to try to take some guys out of it. Maybe it's Debo, maybe it's Ayuk, but that's going to leave Kittle open. Like there's only so many guys you can cover. You can't take McCaffrey out of it. You just can't. So I think Kittle's going to be a good option this week. And as I had mentioned before, um, as you would ask, Zay Flowers, listen, I know he was listed as questionable, but Harbaugh's confident he's going to go. Lamar just loves this dude, right? Like he came in as the rookie from BC and has absolutely killed it for them. So I really like him this week. I think he's going to be an awesome play against this matchup, and I'm really anxious to see what he's able to do against the San Francisco defense. Some of the guys that I have that are sleepers, Isaiah Likely. Listen, he could have a decent game, maybe four catches, 87 yards. I know that seems like it's pretty good for the tight end position, but I just I'm not sure he's going to be great. And that's my concern for it is you really want him to get either a touchdown or over that 100 yards, and I'm not sure he's going to do it in this game. I definitely think you see a lot out of Lamar and less out of likely OBJ, those guys. Um, One sleeper this week that I was going to mention is Ayuk. Now, as I mentioned, like John Harbaugh is going to try to take people out of the game, whether it's Debo, maybe it could be Kittle, right? Like I'm high on Kittle this week, but he could try to take him out of the game and nullify him. And Kittle's known to be a great blocker, so is Ayuk, but like, he could try to take him out of the game. But I think that opens up an opportunity for Ayuk to pop as well. And don't forget, like Ayuk can do that. Remember the first game of the season against Pittsburgh? He ended up playing very, very well in that game. So wouldn't be shocked if we saw that end up happening. But yeah, guys, again, I just wanted to thank you. I know that kind of wraps it up for today. I know we came right up against the deadline there, but just wanted to thank you guys for hopping in and listening. Really appreciate it. I'll be back again next Saturday with more prep for the final week of fantasy because I know playoffs still go into next week. My guillotine league will be done. We'll chat about that, kind of some thoughts on that. But we'll bring you the matchups for the games and then be able to rock and roll for that last week. But good luck this week. And hopefully you guys are able to bring home that trophy. Take care, boys.